The sun that rises for all creatures in every spot of the globe, and the earth that we see nothing of except for its naked face. And from time to time, a scene appears out of the script of life. Infants are born, sheep and other animals live, and the sun sets on tranquil eyes. No one believes that this frame, which we perceive as sad, has witnessed the emergence of great civilizations, civilizations that have left their imprint on the sands of time, which depict their greatness. No one believes the potential that this fragile environment has, which has given birth to great civilizations like the Badia, the steppe area of this region. Palmyra, immortal bride in a gown that seems eternal. With every sunrise, the ruins of Palmyra awake to remind us of the potential that dry environment has to continuous production. Despite the passage of bad times, Palmyra remained and is today a living city, full of palm trees, with dates clustered together in basket forms, a generous gift from the heaven to the land of sands. In addition to palm trees, Palmyra is full of orchards of olives and pomegranate. Its markets full of abundant goodness, hum joie de vivre of the Badia. The Badia. The Syrian Badia covers more than 10 million hectares, which makes up 55% of the total area of Syria. The Badia is still a vital source of livestock production upon which the national economy depends. Grazing activities, which most probably started in the Badia since livestock domestication, some 11,000 years ago, is still a major form of life, is still the typical activity which distinguishes the life in this fragile environment. Sheep herding would not have continued had it not been for an ecological balance that has preserved in the Badia since centuries, due to the wisdom of Bedouin legislation, which ensured sustainable range use in the whole Badia. However, rapid economic and social changes that have set in since the beginning of the last century have put pressure on the pastures of the Badia and have led to the disintegration of the balanced system that used to guarantee its sustainability. Indeed, the basis of the whole nomadic system has collapsed, while new factors have emerged to play a major role in changing life of the Bedouins and the relative ecological system. Mechanization of livestock production, for example, has introduced in the Badia water tank trucks, sheep transportation trucks, firewood transportation means, and even luxury personal cars. The use of these different kinds of transportation has not only contributed to the deterioration of the plant cover, but also to the increased pressure on rangelands. Quick transport of sheep provides easy access to distant pastures. It also provides fast transport for firewood, which in turn leads to more wood cutting and the destruction of useful perennial shrubs, which used to be the pride of the Syrian Badia. Thus, the Badia rangelands have changed from a source of production to a cruel example of deterioration, of the destruction of plant cover, and of soil erosion. The soil has become fragile, unprotected by any plant, swept far by wind and eroded by water movement. As for the remaining plants that one may find, they are of poor quality, of low forage value, such as Piganum harmala, Noa mucronata, and Anabasis syriaca. Pedestal plants and soil hammocks are another depressing example of the deterioration of the Badia environment. This is how the land has become sleek and hard, erosion pavement as it was made of glass. As for this particular location, floods have caused soil erosion and made the land barren. The land has become ragged, the soil unable to hold water, though it is in great need for this water. When shrubs were present, they used to intercept water from floods or rain. Exactly as this plant used to do. The sheep dung heaping around is proof that the plant has intercepted water in this area and has allowed it to infiltrate into the soil, benefiting land and vegetation. What are the reasons for this deterioration? Numerous factors have interacted and helped create this sad reality. Random movement of cars in crisscross back and forth in rangelands. Overgrazing because of the large number of sheep introduced in poor grazing areas. Early grazing that lead to the destruction of plants and roots. And the unsystematic process of cutting useful shrubs for firewood uses. The catastrophic result is the inhabitants, which used to be happy with their badia, their source of food and their means of life, are now in very different situation. They are forced either to travel far to agricultural areas seeking pastures for their sheep or to buy fodder from cities to feed their animals in the barren badia. Thus, they fall into a trap of loans and hard interest, which they are often unable to settle by the end of the season. The Syrian government has tried to limit the deterioration of the badia and has taken several corrective measures. Plowing in the badia was completely forbidden. Hunting was banned for several years and reserves were established. Within this framework of stopping the downward trend of the rangelands, the Syrian government, represented by the Ministry of Agriculture and Agrarian Reform, together with the Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations, FAO, is executing a project funded by the Italian Government Development Cooperation. The main development objective of the project is to rehabilitate the rangelands and to reverse the decline in land productivity and living standards by developing strategies for improved land uses to enhance human resources and improve communication skills of both project staff and Bedouins communities. The project is located to the east of Palmyra city, with total area of approximately 130,000 hectares, divided into 22,000 hectares wildlife reserve and 108,000 hectares surrounding the reserve for 3 cooperatives of Arak, Munbatih and Abbasiyah. Some 426 households with 3,050 people owning approximately 95,000 heads of sheep constitute the 3 cooperatives. Since the beginning, the project turned towards those people. It was designed to involve them with its activities. They are the target group, they are the beneficiaries, they are the main guarantee of the sustainability of project achievements. Based on the above realities, and in order to promote the process of community participation, 4 closely interrelated strategies were developed and implemented. The first strategy is based on the method of project rural appraisal and its implementation in practical fieldwork. Training courses and workshops were implemented in order to equip project staff, the peasant union, and the Bedouins with the basic knowledge, attitudes, and techniques to realize a participatory project approach. Indeed, some of the inhabitants have really become permanent range wildlife guards. Tractor drivers and workers in fence construction, flood outlets building, seed collection, and other income-earning activities. In this context, the Bedouin rural women was specially focused. Training for Bedouin women groups was provided to improve handcrafts, embroidery, and sewing. Traditional training courses systems were avoided. These are some samples of course outputs. which were displayed in some exhibition of Palmyra. Embroidered samples were designed to match marketing aspects and to promote public awareness about biodiversity issues. Bedouins in the project area are now aware about values of colorful desert annual plants in their daily life and in enriching the environment that they live in. At the beginning of every spring, Bedouin women of Talila find in truffles collection and additional income-generating activity, while camel herders find in the reserve a fertile site where grazing was arranged for 1,200 camels. They also have access to water of Talila well through a water pipe. One of the most important factors of interaction between Bedouin families and the project is the services provided. Introducing solar energy is one good example. Bedouins are now familiar with using this clean energy to provide electricity for illumination, TV sets, and other domestic services. Solar energy also provides electricity to fridge equipment in offices and in guards' caravans in the reserve. The second strategy is based on improvement and management of rangelands. The project management team started a range resource inventory and evaluation survey. It was concluded that the present range is extremely poor with perennial vegetation cover averaging about 5%. Approximately 77% of the poor cover was contributed by the low grazing value species of Anabasis syriaca. Once again, the project emphasized the importance of introducing proper monitoring, evaluation, and sustainable management of rangelands. The project started an extensive program of collecting herbarium specimens of all range plants in the project area. Specimens collected were dried, classified, and kept as herbarium materials that can be used as an education tool in the fields of plant taxonomy, pharmacology, phytosociology, and range science. The project also surveyed and identified different range sites and started monitoring current status and trend of rangelands. Such knowledge is essential to design sustainable plans of range management. Project technicians work in this enclosure that represents a different range site. They conduct these measurements the same time every year. The work helps in following up the rate of recovery and vegetation composition changes. The project also sets up the environmental monitoring system. It integrates the three major components: range, animals, and human beings. Positive results of the developed database for the range monitoring in a desert ecosystem can be applied to other regions of similar nature. Trials conducted for directed seeding have shown promising results. The project started reseeding operations using chisel seeder in strips of approximately 3 meters wide, spaced at 20 meters intervals. Also, pitter seeder was used in seeding and making pits that can collect rainwater. Direct seeding operations were carried out in parts of approximately 20,000 hectares area, identified by project surveys and laboratory analysis as best suited for range improvement. Species criteria and better timing for seeding were selected by the project in close consultation with local Bedouin communities. An integrated rangeland management system is planned to be tested in the 3 cooperatives. It aims at sustainability and protection of rangelands. Thanks to a good trained national staff, the project was able to reach these achievements during a relatively short period. Training of national staff is indeed one of the main strategies of the project. Since its beginning, the project started implementing a comprehensive training program. Main outputs were local courses and training in ICARDA. Also, short-term study tours were implemented for some national staff in the United States of America, in the United Kingdom, Jordan, Saudi Arabia, and Egypt. Training subjects were improvement and management of rangelands, monitoring and evaluation of the vegetation cover in grazing sites, collection of data and establishment of a herbarium. Training in improved ecological, biological, and veterinary management of wildlife was also carried out for local staff and veterinarians from the Ministry of Agriculture. Other areas of training have been socio-economic, extension disciplines, and participatory aspects to better involve Bedouin communities. Skill training has concerned computer techniques, English language skills, and production of communication materials for participatory extension. Highly specialized national and international experts and consultants have carried out all training activities. During its short period of life, the project has delivered numerous studies, research outputs, and technical reports. They include recommendations made by international experts. Their publications would concur in improving levels of natural resource planning and management in this region. Reintroduction of wildlife is another important project strategy. Talila, in fact, is the first Syrian natural reserve supposedly established for the purpose of biodiversity conservation and education. In 1991, a trench and an embankment were made to demarcate the reserve. In 1996, a careful plan of reintroduction of antelopes was made and implemented. There's a clear historical evidence that oryx and gazelles herds used to occur in the project area. Also, it is commonly well known that Maha and Reem, their Arabic names, are embedded into the history and culture of this region. Both names are frequently used in classic and modern love poems. Many families in the Arab world are still proud of using both names for their girls. The project has released oryx and gazelles into the 10 square kilometer enclosure, where they became adapted to local conditions and live under sustainable, free-ranging conditions. Some of the gazelles were fixed with radio collar, which is part of an electronic device that allows monitoring technicians to follow and locate movements of herds and enable them intervening in emergency situations. In addition to the introduced species, increased population and biodiversity were observed in the reserve. These include different species of birds, desert cats, reptiles, Euphrates jerboa, rabbits, and foxes. This is the Talila project for range rehabilitation and establishment of a wildlife reserve in the Syrian steppe, a new chapter in the history of the Badia. A radical attempt to transform deteriorated pastures into productive rangelands as it once used to be, so that the soil could once again become fertile, protected by a good plant cover as it was before deterioration. so that free wildlife could run again through the Badia and could give birth in security, so that the sun could rise again on camels happy with what they eat, could rise again on optimist herders, and could paint their sheep with golden colors while running toward fertile, generous rangelands, so that sheep could come back from the pastures to Bedouins proud of their production of milk and meat and every kind of dairy product, butter, butter ghee, and cheese, the generous produce that used to flood the Badia, which in turn used to flood the markets in all corners of Syria.